The paranormal stories that happen in hospitals or any health center are particularly interesting for a simple reason. Any of us at some point in our life stepped into one of these places and understands perfectly that the stories that are born there are often linked to death. Today I invite you to know stories that, as I always say, deserve to be told. But before we start, and as many of you already know, the channel's garments are available. There are t-shirts, there are sweatshirts, there are caps, there are sizes for children, for adults, even special sizes, many colors and many designs to choose from. So, you can request the catalog whenever you want and without obligation to the WhatsApp that appears on screen at this moment. And I ask you to remember that they are only available for the Republic of Argentina at the moment. I also invite you to my secondary channel, Who Was, where every Sunday we have a new case to enjoy, and you already know that the ones coming are really unmissable. Friends, I won't keep you any longer, and we start right now with this new paranormal story. Enjoy it! My name is Mario. I live in Santa Fe, and I would like to tell you some extremely intense things that happened to me at the old Clemente Alvarez Emergency Hospital, also known as Emergency Clemente Alvarez. At that time they demolished the one that was in operation and a new one was built in another place. To understand a little more, I tell you that this hospital was referred to a large part of the emergencies from Rosario, the industrial core, the southern part of Santa Fe. That is, it served a large portion of the province. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nurse, and I'm not an ambulance driver. In fact, I have nothing to do with health, and this may attract attention. My profession has been a mechanic for over 30 years, and at that time I was doing the same job. The thing was that one morning a neighbor contacted me and told me about a situation that I was unaware of until then. They were demolishing the old Emergency Clemente Alvarez Hospital with the intention of moving it elsewhere and using that large plot to build a new courthouse. The news surprised me, but nothing more than that. Then he tells me that through the contact of a security guard from this place, he had bought at a very good price the 4 old 6-cylinder Perkins engines that were used as power generators. They were all in the basement of the building. He then asks me for a quote to remove them from this place and perform subsequent maintenance on some of them. He also mentioned that the basement had an access ramp which was key to be able to enter with a van, load them and remove them from there in a simple way. We closed the deal at a fair price for both of us and finally coordinated to start removing them from the place. It had to be done in the late afternoon when the workers who were demolishing cut off the work and there were minimal works left in this place. We were going to remove one per day because it took a good deal of work to uninstall them and load them into the vehicle logically. One Tuesday we removed the first engine without any problem. It was even easier than I thought. One detail that I only took into account later is that evening when we removed this first engine, there were a lot of noises in this place, even people talking. I imagine that they were probably workers who were working on different tasks because the building had just started demolition works and there were devices inside, there were openings, instruments, many things, but no. I found out later that the only ones who were still working at that time were the security staff, and the noises were not actually from living people. We started to dismantle the second engine on Wednesday afternoon, and in this case it took a little bit more, quite a bit more, because night fell and we still had work to do.
That Wednesday a couple of noises started to catch my attention, Well, but also nothing. We took out the second engine.
He tells me.
Tomorrow. You can come. It's been consecutive days. If you bring me, you saw in the truck. That's what I had told him, that I took in the truck. Let's go on Thursday. And there my blood froze. Look, I tell it and I get goosebumps. Let's go. We arrived. The engine was the same job. Obviously the same key. I was already canchero, because, well, even the place had a crane to lift the engines. We practically left it inside the truck. It was all a wonder. And 4 hours to be there. Look to remove an engine, and 4 hours to be there. Look to remove an engine. I mean, it was all very, very easy.
That night it was just the two of us, and my neighbor also tells me that he had managed to buy one of the side generators and it also had to be removed. Obviously, this was not within the budget because it is something much more complex, but we discussed it at the time and closed the deal. About an hour later, halfway through the job, this friend tells me he was going to buy something to eat and would be back. The truth is, that night had fallen on us again and we were quite hungry. I didn't have any problem. In fact, I stayed working alone, as I like, and then had a peaceful dinner at my house. And in those moments, being alone, one of the security boys, named Gustavo, came over to say hello and chat a bit. I was amazed because in this conversation he started to tell me the things that happened in there. At first I thought it was a joke, a prank, but I realized he was completely serious. He told me that at a certain time, between 2 and 4 in the morning, they had to lock themselves in the cabins and stay there. The rounds were not done as they should because they were very complicated sectors, and he specifically referred to the ghosts, that they felt tremendous things, they saw entities, people who were not there, they bumped into you and there was no one, they whispered to you, it was tremendous. And there he told me that those noises that I mentioned a while ago and were heard every so often, nobody knew where they came from or how they were produced because there were no people in the place. I listened to him and I limited myself to giving him the most sensible opinion that occurred to me. I told him that maybe there were some who sneaked in to steal at night. Being close to a quite marginal neighborhood, it is common for these types of things to happen. But no, he was sure, like everyone who worked there, that these situations did not have a rational or logical explanation as one thinks. The guard left and I was alone again. And no more than about 10 minutes would have passed when I hear noises and someone greeting me. It was the voice of my friend. I didn't see him, but I kept working and asked him if he had found something to eat. Do you know what he answered me? Something totally unexpected. Mario, I'm worried because Neo's room is not working well. I didn't understand what he was referring to and why he was saying this. The building was even without patients, so I turned around to ask him why he was saying this, and I came across something more than strange. I felt the voice meters away from me, not much more, and I want to make this more than clear, but you know what? There was absolutely no one present. I was completely alone in that basement. I searched everywhere. I lit up with the flashlight, and it's just as I tell you, there was no one. This made me very uncomfortable, but I couldn't run away. I was working, so I gritted my teeth, gathered my courage, and kept working until I finished removing that engine, which in fact I had very little left to do. My neighbor still, and while I was waiting for him, I go out to one of the platforms, and while I was waiting for him, I go out to one of the platforms through the access ramps, and I see that down one of the side corridors there was a person standing, who in a blink of an eye, and I swear it was like that, disappeared. There I understood that things were not normal, and as that security employee had told me, the noises, the sensations, and many appearances were due to the paranormal activity that took place in this place. On Thursday we went again in the afternoon with the idea of removing another one of the engines, and a tremendous situation occurred. We finished loading it into the truck, and at the moment when I go back to look for some keys that I had left on the floor, I feel that a woman is calling me. She called me by my name, asking me please not to leave. The fear I experienced is comparable to the chill I feel at this moment remembering that situation. In that basement there was no one. It was completely empty, and perhaps something that generated a dreadful feeling was that there was also no light. We managed with a spotlight connected to a battery and some flashlights, nothing more than that. I heard her very close to me, but that voice came from the darkness, from where there was nothing and no one. I hurried and got out of there as fast as I could. I got in the truck and told Osvaldo what had happened to me. He listened attentively and, nodding his head, confessed to me that when he had gone to buy something to eat, and also on other occasions before coming to pick up the engines, he not only heard this woman, but other people who also called him by his name, and they had also told him that this was normal, to put it simply. The building was full of strange stories, and many were from when the hospital was still in operation. We returned on Friday, but at noon this time, logically, while many workers were working on the dismantling and demolition of this building. It happened that while we were removing the generator and asked two masons for help, they started to chat, and one of them asked us with a bit of shyness at first, I guess because he thought we were going to take it for a joke if we had seen or heard anything strange while we were working there in the basement. because he confessed to us that many times he was spoken to, and particularly an old man, at least by the voice he believed it was, who called him by his name. And from a place where there was nothing but darkness, the basement, or he had also heard voices from an internal corridor that ended in the operating rooms. We told him what had happened to us, and we found out that, apparently, the vast majority of the workers and all the people who had been in that building had experienced some paranormal situation at some point. We left and returned at night to remove the other generator, and here I indeed experienced one of the most chilling moments of my entire life. While we were working, I walked over to the bathroom area. The truth is that I had no idea whether they were still in operation or not. The thing is, I was going down a hallway, and when I turned, I found myself in another quite dark and extremely long corridor where there was something incredible. I could see and pay attention to this with extreme clarity: people. Not one or two, there were more than 10 or 12 easily, and they were all walking down this hallway as if lost, dressed in that classic gown that hospitalized patients wear. I tell you the truth, what I first thought at that second was that they were patients who were still hospitalized, but I automatically understood that the building was almost entirely without power, so it was something impossible, leaving aside that with the demolition works it would be crazy to have people hospitalized. But I was seeing them in this hallway and walking without any direction.
When I approach, I keep getting closer, and they seem to leave. Dissolving the vision, I was scratching my eyes and I started to see the balls. Of the eyes without eyes, let's say. The mouths open like that, black, but I saw a human figure, let's say. I really don't know how to explain it. Besides, that was... I can't assure you, but for me it seemed like a year, and it was a millisecond because I blinked, rubbed my eyes, and there was no one else.
On Saturday we went again at noon. This time it was empty because the works were from Monday to Friday. Yes, of course the boys from the basement were there. When we went down we encountered a problem. To the basement. We encountered a problem when we went down. Apparently during the construction they had broken a water pipe because the engines were flooded. To give you an idea, in some parts it almost reached our knees. We thought it was going to be an impossible task, but nevertheless, we managed to get it out and load it into the van. But just when we thought that day would be somewhat normal, we ran into something strange again.
When we loaded the engine into the truck, we started to feel like we were running in the water. They were running in the water, guys. They were running in
The
water. I never saw anything this time I heard them, but they were children's laughter, splashing in the water. Because imagine, that basement was gigantic, let's say, basement. It was all full of water and you couldn't see anything. We lit up with the flashlight. I didn't see anything. But really hearing kids laughing and splashing there in the water...
Well, something that happened to me for many months to this, I don't know if it will have to do or not, was to dream about very ugly things. I did it almost every night, and being a person who never got carried away by anything. But the reality is that in this case it was so intense and so real that it was impossible not to give it importance. Thanks for reading to the end. What do you think about this case? Have you ever experienced anything paranormal in a hospital? See you in a few days with more stories, and as always I send a big hug to everyone.